Chapter 1. The Death Flag I Didn't See Coming. The first thing Oren noticed upon waking wasn't the satin sheets beneath him or the opulent canopy overhead. It was the heavy weight in his chest. Panic. It crawled up his throat the moment he sat up and caught a glimpse of the ornate mirror across the room. The boy staring back at him had soft blonde waves, pale skin that looked like it belonged in oil paintings, and sharp, fox-like eyes that screamed spoiled noble. Oren Vale, the side villain from his novel, the one he had created as a plot device to contrast the purity of the male lead. And he was now in his body. Oh no, not him. Oren scrambled out of bed and rushed to the desk. His heart thumped as he flipped through a stack of handwritten letters, recognizing the names, the dates, the tone. It was all real. He was no longer in his world. He was inside his novel. And not as the protagonist, not as the mysterious mage, but as Oren Vale, the pretty petty noble who bullied the male lead for years and who died publicly in Chapter 20, decapitated in front of a cheering crowd for attempting to sabotage the royal tournament. He had written it himself, a painful, poetic death. The fans had loved it. Oren wanted to throw up. Okay, breathe. This is fine. All I need to do is stay low, avoid Kalen, never be seen, and absolutely don't get involved in any tournaments. The plan was solid. Stay invisible, no drama, no sabotage, easy. For the first few days, it worked. He skipped events he used to host, dismissed his snobbish entourage, avoided eye contact with his servants, and even took the long way around the palace gardens just to dodge potential plot characters. He was proud of himself. The staff whispered about his unusual quietness, but he didn't care. He had changed the timeline. He would survive. Until, of course, he didn't. It happened on a warm afternoon during the Royal Academy's open ceremony. Oren had no plans to attend, but an old servant reminded him that skipping it would insult the Crown Prince, and insulting the Crown Prince might bring suspicion. So, with a tight smile and a prayer to all fictional gods, Oren dressed and went. The crowd was enormous. Nobles, knights, students, professors, everyone glittering with pride and power. Oren stood at the edge, head bowed, clutching his wine glass like a lifeline. Then it happened. A hush fell over the hall as he entered. Kalen Duskmore, the male lead, the one Oren had spent chapters tormenting in his story, and the one he now wanted to avoid like the plague. Oren instinctively turned his back, inching toward the exit, but just before he could slip away, a hand gently caught his wrist. The hall blurred. Time slowed. Oren turned around slowly, dread and disbelief clawing up his spine. Kalen stood there, impossibly tall and regal in deep black armor, silver embroidery tracing the sleeves like ancient runes. His icy blue eyes locked onto Oren, not with cold hatred like he expected, but with something much worse. Warmth. Familiarity. Longing. You've changed, Kalen said softly, thumb brushing over Oren's wrist like he was checking if he was real. Oren's mind stalled. That voice, low, rough, but reverent. That smile, gentle and devastating. That look in his eyes, devotion mixed with something deeper, something desperate. He had smiled in the novel once, after killing Oren. But this wasn't that. This wasn't a triumphant smile, it was tender. Terrifying. Your Highness, Oren said carefully, pulling his hand back. Forgive me, I didn't mean to disturb your procession. Kalen blinked as if pulled from a trance, but his gaze never wavered. You're avoiding me. Oren's throat dried. No, you used to follow me around. Now you won't even look at me. He stepped closer. Did something happen? Yes, I died. You killed me. Remember? Oh, Oren swallowed the words. He forced a tight smile. Just reflecting. Growing up, perhaps. Kalen's expression softened further, and that was the worst part. He looked at Oren like he was fragile glass, like something he had lost and finally found again. His next words made Oren freeze. You're still beautiful. I thought I'd never get to see you again. That wasn't in the script. That wasn't even in the bonus chapters. Oren stepped back. his pulse a storm in his ears, and bowed stiffly. "If you'll excuse me, Your Highness." He turned and fled. The crowd parted wordlessly for him, though Oren swore he could still feel Kalen's gaze scorching his back like the heat of a sun he had never written. And in that moment, he knew something had gone terribly, horribly wrong. The male lead shouldn't look at the villain like that. Not with affection, not with yearning, not like he wanted to keep him. And definitely not like he remembered something Oren didn't. Chapter 2. That's not how you're supposed to look at me. If someone had told Oren Vale that the crown prince would start stalking him like an overgrown puppy in love, he would have laughed, nervously, and run the other way. But now? He was beginning to suspect he'd triggered some kind of possessive male lead route. Because Kalen was everywhere. At first, Oren thought it was coincidence, a chance encounter in the rose garden, an unexpected run-in near the training yard. But by the sixth suspicious coincidence, Oren knew better. It began with tea. Oren had taken to hiding in the eastern greenhouse, far from the palace's chaos, to sip his favorite chamomile blend and pretend the world didn't exist. It was peaceful there. Quiet. Until it wasn't. A shadow fell across the table, and Oren glanced up with dread tightening his spine. Kalen, again. Dressed in sleek military black, swords strapped to his hips like twin wolves, the crown prince smiled like the sun was inside him. "Do you mind if I sit?" he asked, already lowering himself into the chair across from Oren. Oren blinked. "Don't you have, kingly things to do?" Kalen tilted his head. "None as urgent as this." "This? Being? You." Oren almost dropped his teacup. What part of low profile did the universe not understand? The visits continued. Oren's swordsmanship instructor suddenly took a mysterious leave, replaced by a royal knight who brought Kalen along to observe. His library sessions? Interrupted by Kalen leaning against a bookshelf, flipping through novels Oren once wrote into the plot just to torment him. Even his private tutoring and strategy was no longer safe. "You're not supposed to be here," Oren muttered during one lesson as Kalen settled into the chair beside him. Kalen smirked, taking the book from his hands and setting it down. "I wanted to see how brilliant you've become." "I was always brilliant," Oren snapped before catching himself. Kalen only chuckled, eyes warm. "I know." No. This is not how the male lead was supposed to behave. Kalen was meant to fall for Silas Halrow, the stoic knight in training with ocean eyes and a tragic past. Silas, the original protagonist. The one who saves Kalen during the mid-novel Civil War, confesses during a blood-drenched dawn, and eventually becomes his husband. That was the arc. That was the canon. Oren wasn't supposed to exist past chapter 20. So naturally, Oren came up with a brilliant plan: redirect the plot. He sought Silas out at the academy training grounds. It took some effort. Silas kept to himself, a lone wolf like in the book, but eventually Oren managed to spark a conversation. It wasn't hard. Silas was polite if a bit awkward, surprisingly endearing, and very much not trying to kill Oren, which was a plus. They shared a short exchange over sword grip techniques, followed by a longer chat about their favorite strategy texts. Oren could almost see the story's gears shifting back into place. If he could nudge Silas and Kalen together, then maybe Oren, the voice was like a blade sheathed in velvet. Oren turned. Kalen. Eyes unreadable, shoulders tense. Gaze locked, not on Silas, but on the hand Silas had just placed lightly on Oren's arm. The next moment, Kalen crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Your Highness," Silas greeted respectfully. Kalen didn't respond. He stared at Silas, jaw tight. Then, in a voice that made the surrounding air drop in temperature, he said, "Stay in your place and away from Oren." The silence that followed could have broken glass. Silas blinked. "My apologies, Your Highness. I meant no offense." Kalen's hand curled around Oren's wrist, not harshly but with firm possession. "You're dismissed." Oren's eyes went wide. What the hell was that? Kalen didn't answer until they were alone in the corridor. Even then, he didn't speak, just looked down at Oren's wrist in his hand, then up at his face. There it was again, that look, like Oren was something sacred, something his. I don't like others touching you, Kalen said finally, voice quiet. You. Oren yanked his hand away. That's not how you're supposed to look at me. Kalen blinked. How am I supposed to? Like I'm a pest, a nuisance. You're supposed to hate me, not... He gestured wildly. Not show up at my tea table and act like we're engaged. A long pause. Then Kalen whispered, Do you want me to hate you? Oren stared at him, mouth dry. Kalen stepped closer. The gold in his eyes was molten, burning. Because I've tried. For years I tried to forget. But now you're here and you're different. Kind, soft, real. Forget? Oren's stomach flipped. That wasn't in the book. Kalen leaned in, voice trembling like a secret. Don't make me lose you again. And for the first time, Oren realized this wasn't the Kalen from the early chapters. This Kalen remembered something else. Something Oren hadn't written. Chapter 3. The night he called me his treasure. Oren didn't mean to get involved. He was just trying to sneak some pastries from the royal kitchen when all hell broke loose. A runaway beast, part of a royal hunting show, had broken its magical restraints and rampaged into the inner palace grounds. Guards were scrambling. Nobles were screaming. Magic spells fizzled in the air. And in the middle of the chaos, Kalen, cornered near a fractured marble archway, shielding two terrified court mages behind him, sword raised. The creature lunged. Oren didn't think. He moved. Using the vines from the garden spell he learned as a joke last week, he whispered the incantation with shaky fingers. Roots erupted from the ground, coiling around the beast mid-air, dragging it down. The impact cracked stone. Silence fell. Kalen's gaze met Oren's from across the smoke and dust. It was the same expression from their first encounter, relieved, amazed, and terrified all at once. Later that evening, Oren tried to sneak back to his room without encountering any more monsters or princes. He succeeded in avoiding nobles, but not Kalen. Oren, the voice came gently from within the shadowed corridor leading to the eastern wing. He froze. I didn't do it for you, he said quickly. I did it because I hate blood. Kalen stepped out of the shadows, golden eyes glowing in the torchlight. Still, you saved me. No, I saved the pastry I hadn't finished eating. Kalen smiled faintly. Thank you. Oren stiffened as Kalen moved closer. He expected a handshake, maybe a bow, but instead, fingers brushed his cheek. You've changed, Kalen murmured, as if tasting the words again. Then, softer, I won't let you die again. The words hit Oren like a slap wrapped in silk. Again. Kalen blinked, the slip vanishing almost as quickly as it came. Forget I said that. But Oren couldn't. Something was wrong. No, not wrong, off script. He wasn't just dealing with a lovesick prince. He was dealing with someone who remembered more than he should. Later that night, after forcing himself not to think about Kalen's hand on his face or the warmth that had spread through his ribs like fire, Oren returned to his chambers to find a box on his bed. Wrapped in navy velvet ribbon. Inside, a crystal vase holding a lunaflare bloom, a rare flower that only bloomed under starlight and was said to grow in the royal family's ancestral lands. The petals shimmered like frost and fire, changing colors when touched. Beneath it, a note in elegant, familiar handwriting. Your place is beside me, not beneath the blade. Kalen. Oren stared at the message long into the night. He didn't reply. He couldn't. The next few days blurred into something dangerously warm. Kalen didn't press him, didn't confront him again about the flower or the note. Instead, he shifted. Instead of chasing, he lingered. At fencing lessons, he wordlessly corrected Oren's grip, fingers brushing his wrist longer than needed. During court banquets, he only looked at Oren and smiled when Oren tried not to smile back. When Oren fell asleep in the library after a long study session, he woke to a blanket over his shoulders and a tray of warm chocolate pastries, his favorite. Small things, thoughtful things. Things he shouldn't like. But he did. Damn it, he did. It was on the 5th night when Oren went out to the royal greenhouse again to escape his own heart that Kalen found him sitting beside the Luna bloom. I can't sleep, Kalen admitted softly, unless I know you're safe. Oren tried to scoff, but his voice cracked. You're making it harder to hate you. Kalen laughed once. Then I'll keep trying. He knelt before Oren and took his hand. You don't have to love me now. You don't have to say it. Oren's breath hitched. I just need you to stay alive this time. Again, with the this time, Oren whispered. Kalen leaned in, forehead brushing his. You were mine once, in a life that ended too soon, but this time, his voice broke. I'll protect you, even if you never love me back. Oren didn't pull away. He didn't answer either. But when Kalen brushed a kiss against the back of his hand and called him softly, my treasure, Oren's heart cracked open a little more. He didn't want to admit it yet, but he was falling, and that terrified him more than anything. Chapter 4. His devotion scares me. Oren knew Kalen was obsessed. He just didn't know how far that obsession went. It started with a simple decision. Seek help. Asterisk. Not from Kalen, not from Silas, but from Seren, the court's arcane scholar, and one of the few who might know if someone could retain memories from a previous timeline. Oren needed answers. He sent a discreet message, arranged a quiet meeting in the old astronomy tower, and slipped out before dawn. But when he reached the spiral staircase, a shadow stepped in front of him. Kalen. Oren blinked. Kalen. What? You were going to see Seren. Oren's breath caught. Are you following me now? Kalen didn't answer. He stepped closer instead, the torchlight casting golden glints in his eyes. Why him? I needed advice, that's all. You were asking him how to stop me, Kalen said too softly. Weren't you? Oren's throat tightened. If you already know, why ask? Kalen's jaw clenched, then loosened. He told you about fate, didn't he? Kalen asked, eyes glinting. About how I was supposed to marry Silas. Oren flinched. Aiden, Kalen's older cousin and the head advisor, had intercepted Oren earlier that week, warned him. You're interfering with the Crown Prince's fate. He belongs with Silas, not with you, Vale. Oren hadn't told anyone. Apparently, he didn't need to. Kalen leaned down until their foreheads nearly touched. I don't care about fate, he said, voice shaking. I only care about you. Oren's stomach twisted. I want to marry you, Oren, Kalen whispered. Have a life with you. A beautiful one. Maybe even a child or two if you'd like that. I know you have a soft spot for me. I see it. Every time you look away when I get too close. Every time your hand lingers on mine a second too long. Oren tried to step back, but Kalen's hand caught his wrist. Not harsh, never harsh, but firm. I can't let you go again. There was that word again. Again. But what frightened Oren more than Kalen's certainty was how powerless he was to stop him. Because Kalen was the Crown Prince. If he proposed a marriage alliance with the Vale family, they'd fall over themselves to accept. Oren's parents would sell him off in a heartbeat. And to Oren's dread, that's exactly what Kalen did. It was a royal banquet, winter's feast. Nobles from all 4 provinces had gathered to pay respects. Oren stood near the back, sipping wine and trying not to be noticed when it happened. A noblewoman from House Lennox sneered in his direction. Oren Vale, that soft-spoken parasite who clings to his highness like a tick, his family must be desperate to rise in rank. The words were loud enough for others to hear. Several courtiers tittered behind fans. Oren froze. His ears burned, but he stayed still. He'd learned not to cause scenes. But the next voice cut through the room like steel. Say that again. Gasps. Silence. Kalen had risen from the head table, wine untouched, expression frozen. The noblewoman stammered. Your Highness, I meant no disrespect. Say it again, Kalen repeated, his voice low, dangerous. And I'll have you escorted out of this palace for slandering the future crown consort. The room exploded in whispers. Oren nearly choked on air. Crown, what? Kalen stepped forward, ignoring every stunned stare. He reached Oren's side, took his hand, and kissed his knuckles. I had planned to make this official next week, he said, gaze only on Oren. But now seems like a fine time. He turned to the stunned court. I, Kalen Evandrius Aldrich, Crown Prince of Leorin, announce my engagement to Oren Vale. A loud clang echoed as someone dropped a goblet. Even Silas, the original protagonist, looked baffled. Oren? Oren wanted to scream. Instead, he stood frozen as courtiers stared. Whispers turned to arguments. Someone fainted. And right next to him, Kalen was smiling. Warm, content, completely and terrifyingly in love. Oren's heart pounded. This isn't the story I wrote. This isn't supposed to happen. But as Kalen laced their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world, Oren finally understood. He was no longer just a side villain. He was Kalen's chosen. And there might be no turning back. Chapter 5. Our Vows and the Secret. He tried to hide from me. The wedding came faster than Oren expected, because Kalen made sure it did. One royal decree, and suddenly the entire kingdom was preparing for the marriage of Crown Prince Kalen Aldrich and Oren Vale, the once feared noble who had somehow become the most talked about name in the empire. Oren protested, of course. He tried to argue that they barely knew each other, that love shouldn't be forced, that this wasn't how things were supposed to go. But Kalen only smiled with that infuriatingly gentle look in his eyes and said, I've known you for longer than you think, and I'm willing to wait a lifetime for you to accept my love, but not to call you my husband. Oren's family, traitors, the lot of them, accepted the royal proposal within minutes, bowing to the crown prince and weeping with joy as if they were the ones marrying him. And when Kalen personally came to ask for Oren's hand, kneeling in the moonlit gardens with a custom silver ring inlaid with stardust, Oren found himself speechless. Even then, Kalen whispered, You don't have to love me back now, just stand beside me. I'll wait until you do. The wedding ceremony was held in the grand sun spires, beneath a blooming arch of moonflowers and enchanted crystal chandeliers. Oren wore ivory, his long cape trailing behind him like starlight. Kalen wore deep blue robes embroidered with silver threads, designed to match Oren's eyes, he claimed. As Oren walked down the aisle, every noble and servant bowed. But Kalen looked like he was about to cry. The vows were old, sacred, and magical. But when Kalen spoke, his voice trembled with raw honesty. I swear by every lifetime, every fate, and every version of us, I choose you. I will choose you always. Oren's voice caught in his throat, and before he could stop himself, he whispered, And I choose to stay. The sealing kiss wasn't just a kiss. It was the beginning of a new story, one not written by fate, but carved by their own hands. After the ceremony, Oren found himself wrapped in Kalen's arms more often than not. The palace had changed. Its halls now felt like home. He was no longer the side character or the doomed villain. He was the beloved consort, the husband of a prince who had rewritten destiny to keep him safe. And slowly, with every morning kiss and every night, Kalen held him like he was the most precious thing in the world. Oren's heart began to fall. Not quickly, not all at once, but surely, completely, and irrevocably. Currently, it had been a year since their wedding. One whole year of waking up in silk sheets, wrapped in the arms of the crown prince, now king, of Leorin. 1 year of being Oren Aldrich, royal consort, no longer just a name pulled from a discarded manuscript. And Kalen, if he was obsessed before marriage, now he worshipped him. He never let Oren walk alone in the palace halls, kissed his fingers before meetings, sent flower arrangements with notes like, Your smile kept me alive today, whispered mine against Oren's skin like a prayer every night. It was suffocating sometimes, but also warm, steady, real. And slowly, painfully, fearfully, Oren had fallen in love with him, not just with the prince or the king, but with Kalen, the boy who held him like glass and protected him like steel. But one thing never left Oren's mind. That night, their very first encounter. "I won't let you die again." Oren had asked more than once, softly, carefully. Kalen always dodged it, distracted him with kisses, changed the subject, brought up silly court gossip or demanded cuddles instead. Oren let it slide, until he couldn't. That day, he ventured into the forbidden library of the royal palace. Few entered it, fewer left it without consequence. But he had clearance now. He was, after all, the king's spouse. Among dusty books and magic scrolls, tucked inside a sealed box, Oren found it. His author's notebook. The one he thought he'd never written in this world. Shaking fingers flipped through pages, familiar lines, familiar words, until he found a set of half-burnt entries. On one page, scrawled in fading ink, Kalen held Oren Vale in his arms as blood soaked through his tunic. The tournament arena was in flames. Oren had jumped in front of the blade. He wasn't supposed to care. But he did. And Kalen couldn't save him in time. Oren stared, breath frozen in his chest. He never published this. He never even typed it. It was an abandoned thought, an alternate timeline he once imagined, then discarded. But Kalen lived it. The depth of Kalen's love, the desperation, the soul-bound need, the fear of letting Oren out of his sight, it all made sense now. That night, Oren didn't wait for the perfect moment. He walked into their bedroom, pages in hand, and dropped them on the bed. "Tell me," he said, voice soft but firm. "Tell me everything." Kalen froze. His eyes dropped to the pages and he crumbled. He sat at the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, tears quietly slipping down his cheeks. "I tried," he whispered. "I tried to save you." Oren stood frozen as Kalen choked out the truth. How he had lived that timeline. How he'd watched Oren die. How the world reset, inexplicably, with only him remembering. "How could I let it happen again?" Kalen whispered, broken. "I've done everything to keep you safe. Changed everything. Just to see you smile again." Oren's heart shattered. He didn't speak. He just pulled Kalen into a tight embrace and kissed him, long and deep until they couldn't breathe. That night, they made love. Not in a desperate frenzy, not like before, but with tenderness, devotion. Kalen marked Oren with a soul bond spell older than time, one whispered only between fated lovers. Their auras pulsed together, golden light encircling them as their souls were sealed into one. Forever. A month later, Oren stood in front of the palace healer, staring at the glowing spell print across his abdomen. You're sure?" he asked, voice trembling. The healer smiled, bowing. "Positive, Your Grace. You're carrying His Majesty's heir." Oren blinked, then cried, then ran, laughing, stumbling, into Kalen's war room, interrupting a council meeting, grabbing his husband's hand and pressing it to his belly. Kalen stilled. "What? I'm pregnant," Oren whispered. And in that moment, the king of Lyran broke into the most radiant, teary smile Oren had ever seen. He stood, lifted Oren into his arms, and twirled him around, laughing and sobbing like a man who had just been given the universe. "My treasure," he whispered, kissing Oren's cheeks over and over. "My miracle, my love." That night, as they curled in bed, Kalen whispered into his hair, "You're not my fate, Oren. You're my choice, and I'll choose you in every world, every lifetime." Oren smiled sleepily, resting his hand over his belly. "I'll choose you too. Forever." Epilogue. Our little star. Pregnancy, as it turned out, was nothing like the novels Oren once wrote. It was exhausting, emotional. His feet hurt, his back ached, and the palace maids were too scared to offer help because Kalen wouldn't let anyone but him do anything for Oren. Kalen carried Oren's slippers before he even asked for them, massaged his legs at night, learned how to cook because Oren once craved strawberries dipped in honeyed cream at midnight, and Kalen made sure it was on the royal kitchen menu the next day. He memorized the healer's schedule and practically lived beside Oren, canceling meetings, pushing court work to the nights, and glaring at anyone who suggested His Majesty was being overdramatic. "I'm not dramatic," Kalen would say, wrapping his arms around Oren's growing belly like it was sacred. "I'm just madly in love." By the 7th month, Oren began to waddle. He was cranky, sleepy, but in love, with the soft way Kalen kissed his belly every morning, with the letters Kalen wrote to their unborn child, with the way Kalen cried during their first lullaby practice. And finally, the day came. It was a rainy night. Thunder cracked outside the palace windows as Oren went into labor. Kalen panicked. He forgot his title, forgot his guards, forgot royal dignity. He held Oren's hand the entire time, whispering reassurances even as tears ran down his face. "You're doing perfect, my love," he murmured again and again. "I'm here. I'm right here." After hours of labor, tears, pain, and a burst of magic stronger than anything Oren ever felt, their baby was born. A little boy, wrapped in golden cloth, with tufts of soft raven hair and sleepy gray eyes that shimmered like stormlight. Oren held him first, tears falling silently. And when he handed the baby to Kalen, the mighty king broke into quiet sobs. "Hello, little star," Kalen whispered. "You're the dream we never knew we needed." They named him Elior Vale Kalen Aldrich, a name meaning light of dawn. And light he was. Parenthood was chaos, beautiful chaos. Oren woke up at odd hours to feed Elior, and Kalen insisted on changing most of the diapers. Royal duties be damned. The baby's giggle became the anthem of the palace. Kalen wore Elior in a sling during meetings and read kingdom treaties aloud like bedtime stories. Oren sang lullabies from his old world, telling Elior fairy tales of two soulmates who found each other across lifetimes. The kingdom called them an odd pair. But to Oren, they were simply a family. His son in his arms. His husband beside him. The story that had once been a tragedy rewritten as a warm, glowing fairy tale. One night under soft stars, Oren rocked Elior to sleep and looked at Kalen, who leaned in the doorway with that same smile, the one from the beginning, full of devotion. "You really remember that other timeline, don't you?" Oren whispered. Kalen nodded. "I'll never forget it. But you gave up your fate. For me?" Kalen walked over, wrapping his arms around Oren and their child. "I didn't give it up. I just chose a better one." Oren smiled, kissing his son's forehead. "And I'm glad you did." In the palace lit by warm candlelight and love that spanned timelines, a villain who was never meant to live held the future in his arms. And for once, he didn't need to write a new ending. Because this one was already perfect.